Okay, we've been covering the state level proposals to make abortions almost or completely illegal. Yesterday, we talked about Alabama, no abortions other than exceptions for the health of the mother. On the program tomorrow, I'm going to talk about Missouri. And I've already explained the sort of underlying idea here, which is that you've got a right wing Supreme Court now, thanks to Donald Trump, more right wing than any court we've had in a long time. So the strategy is get some crazy bill passed at the state level. It will be immediately appealed and challenged. And more than likely, because it's so whacked out and in many ways would conflict with Roe v. Wade, it is likely to be struck down by a lower court, appeal it all the way up to the Supreme Court, and then hopefully get a decision from this very conservative Supreme Court that will allow a national pushback on abortion regulations everywhere. There's a really good piece in Vox that explains that this is not just like a pipe dream for the religious right, that this is Roe v. Wade in spirit and in name is in danger because of this, what I called yesterday, a very clever strategy by the religious right. But what I want to talk about today is that even if Roe v. Wade stands, legally speaking, if it stays enacted in force, the spirit of Roe v. Wade is in danger either way. Because you can undo the effect of Roe versus Wade without actually undoing Roe versus Wade in and of itself. And that is sort of the premise of these really extreme anti-abortion bills that have passed in 2019, 4, 5, 6, depending on how you're counting. And at some point, something is very likely to get to the Supreme Court, okay? That won't, by definition, get Roe v. Wade overturned. And there are more and more analysts that are pointing out astutely that overturning Roe v. Wade may not even actually be the goal of these anti-choice activists. And it might not even be the best thing for the anti-choice movement. The idea being, if Roe v. Wade stays as the law, that emboldens and empowers the activism of the anti-choice movement to say Roe v. Wade is still there, but we're working at the state level to stop all abortion. They can keep raising money around the issue. And you can do a lot of damage to abortion rights without actually overturning Roe v. Wade itself. Roe v. Wade in 73, at the federal level said abortion is legal up to 22 to 24 weeks in most cases. And so the problem that a lot of states run up against when they try to pass more restrictive laws than that is that they conflict with federal supremacy and Roe v. Wade. So that's why lower courts will typically strike them down. And the Supreme Court is rarely going to hear them because it's pretty clear that they conflict with Roe v. Wade. The idea here is you've got a particularly conservative Supreme Court. If you can word one of these bills in a way that maybe some element of it, or along some very narrow legal interpretation, the law would be okay at the state level, or a part of the law would be okay at the state level, you could get a ruling from this very conservative Supreme Court that will, without overturning Roe v. Wade in and of itself, create a framework or a sort of guide to how at the state level you can pass something that would be more restrictive than Roe v. Wade. The other practical matter that would point to this being a better strategy than just trying to get Roe v. Wade overturned is that even the anti-abortion Supreme Court justices may not want to attach their names to overturning Roe v. Wade. So whether Roe v. Wade stays or goes in name, the idea here is that the principles of Roe versus Wade can be dismantled by these endless little cuts that could come as soon as one of these state abortion bans gets to the Supreme Court and gets a favorable ruling, even in some sense. And then they can make states be allowed to have much more leeway in deciding what to do about abortion. And maybe the most important thing to remind you about is that with lots of, similarly to lots of other political issues that are great for angering people and for raising money and for making noise, but not necessarily representative of the national opinion, most of the American people are not on the anti-abortion side. And we have sort of two important data points on this. Number one, for the first time ever a few years ago, support for abortion in what's called most cases. So obviously there are particular cases where you do get a majority of the country saying I'm against abortions in that particular situation. In most cases, more than half the country supports abortion, and that is a number that was only first achieved a couple of years ago. So support for abortion has been rising. But even if you look at the individual state level, there is not a single state where a total abortion ban has even 25% support. We're putting on the screen a data analysis by Data for Progress from Cooperative Congressional Election Studies data. So understand that states are passing almost total abortion bans, even though the people in not a single state support that at even a rate of 25%. The problem is that abortion is a really strong single issue topic. So guns, we've talked about guns. People have very partisan and extreme, and by extreme, I don't mean extreme on the political spectrum, but very ingrained views about guns. But it doesn't seem like guns are nearly as much of a voting issue as other issues. Abortion is a really big voting issue. Donald Trump has lived a life completely antithetical to evangelical Christianity's stated principles, stated being a key word. But in the end, evangelicals voted for Trump. Why? Because Trump now claims to be against abortion, and Hillary Clinton is pro-choice. And that actually is a big voting motivator for people in lots of parts of the country. So Roe v. Wade is in serious danger, even if the law in and of itself remains in force. I told you exactly the way that it would happen 2 years ago. It is happening. And if there's any wake-up call here, it's we cannot let Donald Trump get a third Supreme Court pick. We know how to prevent that from happening, at least potentially, depending on what happens in the next year and a half. We've got to vote him out in November of 2020. Make sure you're following the show on Instagram at David Pakman Show. Follow me on Instagram at david.pakman. I will be photo blogging my upcoming trip, which I think many of you will find very interesting. We'll take a quick break and be back after this.